Estate planning. Just what is estate planning? Well, estate planning is all about positioning one's assets, their money, their property, in such a way that they protect their family. It's just not protecting the money, but protecting the family that's going to get the benefit of that money and that property. There are several items that we need to look at when we do estate planning. Clarify the client's interests. A lot of times clients come to us and they're not even sure what they want, or they may have a vague idea of what they want to do or where they want to be as far as disposing of their property upon their death, or caring for their loved ones upon their death. And so a lot of times we're assisting the clients to understand what exactly do they want to accomplish. The second thing is managing and distributing assets upon the client's death. And it's just not upon death that we're concerned about managing a person's estate, but actually it's during their lifetime. We have all kinds of issues dealing with incapacity. If someone is incapacitated, perhaps institutionalized, a nursing home or something like that, they would not be in a position to control make legal decisions. Someone has to do that for them. Well, we call that part of estate planning. You plan just not for death, but also disability or incapacity. You may have the money passing to a family member who is really not in a position or able to make financial decisions. Perhaps it's a beneficiary who themselves is disabled or incapacitated. So that's one of the things we try to do with estate planning too, is make management of our estate much simpler and easier. Reduce taxes upon death. In some circumstances, there may be some taxes involved that we can avoid having to pay. And so what we're trying to do is preserve wealth in making certain arrangements with our estates or our clients' estates. And then the fourth item here is minimizing expensive legal procedures and the bills that go with them. There are a whole variety of legal approaches, legal procedure approaches that can be taken in handling someone's estate, whether they're incapacitated or upon their death. And the decisions that are made in setting up their estate and planning for incapacity or planning for death can really hold down those legal expenses. So who is this on the planning team for doing estate planning? Well, obviously we do have the attorney, and in some estates where the assets are great enough, the estate is large enough, maybe there's a family business, you're going to have an accountant involved. Maybe, depending on what the person's objectives are, there may be life insurance involved. And we'll talk about some of these tools in just a minute. Maybe even a bank trust officer who may be the individual that's going to be involved with assisting or carrying out the management of the estate. And then, of course, we have the paralegal. And so let's look at the American Bar Association definition of a paralegal. Paralegal is someone who is, and there are three parts to this, but it's someone who is qualified by education, training, or work experience. So there's a variety of ways you can get to learn how to do these tasks to acquire the skills of a paralegal. Education, training, or work experience. Secondly, this person that we call a paralegal or a legal assistant, that means the same thing, they're retained, they work for a lawyer or maybe a law firm or a corporation. Many corporations have law departments, or a government agency, or there may be other entities, a nonprofit. But a paralegal is working for one of those types of entities. And then probably most importantly is this third item here. A paralegal is someone who performs specifically delegated substantive legal work. Work that the lawyer is ultimately responsible for. Well, what this means is the paralegal is practicing law without a license of their own. They're practicing law on the lawyer's license, but only to the extent that the lawyer tells them exactly what to do. So that's the key word here in this whole sentence here. Delegated substantive legal work. So what sort of things does a paralegal do when we do estate planning? Well, we're information people. Paralegals gather information, we process information, we report information. And so there's a lot of information gathering going on with estate planning. Particularly things like, what is the domicile of the client? Or after the fact of the deceased. You know, where does or did this person legally reside? What is their domicile? And sometimes that can be a tricky question. Most often it is not. Most often it is very clear, but there are times when there are questions, where did this person actually live? And that has enormous implications when it comes to taxation of the estate. And you'll even have some states fighting with other states over where the person actually was domiciled, because it means tax revenue. Perfect example of that would be Howard Hughes's large estate. We also are involved with identifying property that the person has in their estate that they want to distribute. And so we have to not only identify, but we have to be able to describe it adequately so that we know what property we're talking about. And we also have to have a good understanding of the value of that property, once again, for tax purposes. Paralegal will also be involved with assisting in who are the beneficiaries of this estate. Who does the client intend this person to be? Yes, they'll be visiting with the lawyer, but a lot of the detail work in identifying these folks, identifying their contact information, recording it so it's handy in the file, that falls to the paralegal frequently. And so identifying these folks. And then sometimes it may even be important for the paralegal to be assigned to sit down with the client and work out the client's family tree, so you can know who all of these people are that may potentially be beneficiaries of the client's estate. And then, of course, underscoring again, understanding, discerning the client's objectives. What does the client want to achieve? And that is so very important for the paralegal to be aware of, so that as the paralegal visits with the client in doing client interviews, in particular, that they're listening for what it is the client is trying to achieve. And particular tasks that the paralegal does in this information gathering, well, we're doing client interviews, as I said before, and a lot of document drafting. There may even be probably will be, some internet research, getting on the internet and tracking down property values if it is real property, and contact information for family members and witnesses and so forth. And then if there are any documents to be filed, now, and most of that is going to be once you're doing the probate, not so much on the front end with the estate planning, but at some point there will be a time when you're doing some filing at the courthouse, and maybe even e-filing. So that might be important. Those are things that the paralegal would be involved in. And so then who else other than the paralegal, the insurance, the lawyer, the banker, trust officer, underwriter, what all those people are involved in, or the preparation of dealing with these tools on this board here. what are some of these tools that lawyers and the other folks on the team, what are the tools that we are using, that we are creating to get the client where the client wants to be? Well, obviously, first and foremost will be the will. Will is a document that disposes of someone's property upon their death. Trusts, sometimes the trusts are what we would call a living trust that would be active during a person's lifetime before they die, or it may be a trust that's going to be within their will and coordinate with their will. Powers of attorney are very, very important to do planning in the event of incapacity prior to the person dying. If they have a simple power of attorney in place in the hands of someone that they trust so very, very much, because this is very subject to abuse here. But a power of attorney in the hands of someone that they trust, a loved one, can do wonderful things in avoiding a lot of unnecessary, what otherwise would be unnecessary court proceedings and legal expenses. Gifts are an important tool, as is insurance. And then powers of appointment, that's where you do that inside of a will rather than leave a gift outright, that you would designate someone in the will to make that gift for you. And so it allows for flexibility. Retirement plans are an important part of, pension plans and so forth are part of the estate planning process. Family limited partnerships, particularly if there's a family business that's involved. It may be advantageous for tax purposes. It may be for transfer purposes as well to do a family limited partnership. And then, of course, there's this notion of post-mortem estate planning. Even after the person has passed, yes, there are even some choices that can be made that can eliminate and hold down costs, and particularly taxes. It's not advisable in every estate, but in some estates, a beneficiary may find it advantageous for all the beneficiaries as a whole that a gift be disclaimed by one beneficiary and then passed to maybe a contingent beneficiary. So these are the main tools of doing estate planning, and this was an overview of estate planning in general.